I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't have a plan. Ever felt like that? Not sure where to start when you're maybe setting out to make art, or in your life generally? Maybe if you're like in a new job and you don't know what you're doing and you're having to show up and without really knowing what you're doing, or you are in a space where you're encouraged to make some art but you're not sure where to start, maybe worried about what it might look like. Rest assured, I've got your back. It's so common to feel that you have to have a particular plan in order to start making art. But actually, it's okay to not have a plan. And in fact, if you set about making art without a particular intention, that in itself can be powerful and a really good way to process emotions, express yourself, connect with your own experiences, connect with what you need in the moment and meet a need. And so actually, I'm going to talk through a little bit of that. And I don't actually have a plan for the art that I'm going to make today, but I decided to create this video to demonstrate what it might be like to start something without having a plan, and why that can actually be really powerful. So the idea of starting a journey and going on a journey where you're thinking about the different steps, you're starting from here and wanting to go there. You're starting from maybe a walk or a car journey, and you have an idea of where you're going to be going. That is such a common experience for us. In life, we often have copies of other people, role models. People might have been on a journey in life, like gone through a process, gone to school, gone to get a job, gone and done all these different things. Certain things that we're maybe, according to society, expected to do in life. A blueprint of the world, and depending on your worldview and what would be expected from you. And in some ways that can make things easier, because we think, oh, what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to go to school. Like as a child, you would have that plan given to you by your parents, your carers, the adults that are in your world. But then when we become an adult, we suddenly are faced with this sense of responsibility and expectation that things might have to be right, that you might have to do things in a way that fits expectations, that follows a plan, that maybe meets a need and has an outcome, maybe an outcome that other people might like, maybe something that you'd like to achieve yourself, but perhaps not necessarily something that you've maybe only doing for yourself, but maybe sometimes we do these things because we think that we should do them. And actually, if we're starting something with the end in mind, whatever that's like, we can often miss that journey. We can often miss the enjoyment of the journey or the lessons along the way. So I'm making art without a plan today, and actually I had a loose plan in the fact that I have been sorting out my living room, sorting out this space, and I came to realise that I had a whole load of stuff, loose ends of different art materials that didn't have a home, that were just downstairs. So I found some plates and I thought, well, I'm just going to make something with those, and decided to do a video on this. So sometimes people would say to me, some of the people that I speak with, either who are clients who I'm working with art therapy, or who I see just who I'm supporting with their creativity, and they might say things like, well, I just feel like I don't know where to start. I worry about making mistakes and worry about what it's going to look like. Maybe doing something wrong and it feeling rubbish for me. Or on the other hand, sometimes people say, oh, I love the idea of just getting messy and doing something, like being sort of envious of me doing something really expressive and messy, but might feel overwhelmed by it and might feel a bit unsure how to go about it. And my clients in art therapy might want me to help them, want me to give them a theme or give them an idea of what they could draw, maybe suggest what colour to use, suggest what materials to use. And actually, in some ways, this can be really helpful for somebody because it might offer some reassurance, but in the long run, somebody being able to sit with that strange, perhaps uncomfortable feeling of not knowing what to do can be a mark of the capacity for change and the capacity for building confidence and overcoming challenges that are not art therapy related, that are not art related. So for instance, I'm painting here and, you know, from a personal point of view, I do enjoy using paint. I didn't always. My background as an artist and as a creative is textiles. That's what my degree was when I went to uni. Constructed textiles, so I was doing knitting and weaving and tapestries and like using different materials in 3 dimensions, like models and things like that. So I wasn't really familiar with painting, and I've got to admit I found it a little bit intimidating. I was doing a design degree, and there were people that in one of my halls that I live with, there were people who were on the art degrees, and for no fault of their own, they were maybe, I kind of saw them as being higher in prestige than me as a designer. And it's strange because actually the artwork, the images that I made were more individual images and pieces of art than a product, like a design. And so even though my degree is design, I see myself as an artist. And I didn't really paint. I'd maybe do something like this, and then it would be some of the colours and some of the shapes might be then made into something that was design based, something textile based. And then I ended up, if you know me or you've met me before, you've heard me talking about my sort of story, you'll know that I used to be an art teacher. So I was an art teacher for 11 years, and during that time, of course, you use lots of different materials. You're teaching children, young people, how to use different art techniques, different materials. And what happens with that is that I had to learn some of these techniques, and I had to learn ways to use techniques that would be helpful for students. And actually, as a teacher, there's very much that idea of having a plan. You would work with students with a plan, and sometimes some of it would be, the plan might be to experiment with materials. That's what the plan might be. Or the plan might be to be mixing colours, or to be creating something with a theme like a landscape or a portrait. But then essentially it was, in education, it was about creating something to work towards a final piece. So every idea that you had, every piece of art was maybe a practice piece or a developmental of ideas towards something, maybe a finished piece, like the exam piece or something like that. And that is what is so different from using art in art therapy, using art in a therapeutic way. So art therapy is, in a nutshell, captures people's capacity to express themselves. So using art as a way of communicating and processing thoughts, feelings and experiences. So when people would maybe say, oh, I really love art, it's really calming, it's really relaxing, it's really therapeutic, they would be talking about the general therapeutic benefits of art rather than about art therapy. And this is where the difference is with not having a plan. Because by not having a plan and doing art therapy, if it was specifically working with a therapist like myself, you would be opening up yourself to whatever comes up, to a new possibilities, and maybe opening yourself up to vulnerability. It might feel stressful or overwhelming to do something unfamiliar. So it might be that using a new material like paint, acrylic paints for instance, if you haven't used them before, could feel stressful. It could be quite scary and quite overwhelming, and that can come with the unknown, that fear of the unknown and not knowing how to use those techniques. And same goes for sort of other things like pastels and chalks or 3D things. And so actually there's that maybe sense of, oh, I'd like to be able to do something and learn how to do it. And when I became an art therapist, I had to put aside the lessons, the teaching part of art, and helping people with the skills to learn how to mix colours, for instance, learn about the properties and how thick paint is compared, maybe how thick acrylic is compared to watercolours and those kind of things. I had to put that aside in order to really anchor in my knowledge and understanding of art therapy, in order to get my qualification, in order to navigate that process of being in a new role. And so actually there were probably times when people would be maybe needing to learn a little bit about a technique, an art technique or something, and that encouragement from me to just go with it and test it out and go with it would be necessary. However, I would be resistant to it, and I would be like, and there's a fine balance with this actually, between helping somebody to understand the technique and encouraging them to just see what happens, like do whatever to see what happens. And actually knowing clients, getting to know people that I'm working with, helps me to meet their needs, to understand whether actually now's the time to show you the technique, now's the time to help you to mix these colours, now's the time to reassure you about your art, now's the time to give you a plan, to give you a starting point. But when I first started as learning about art therapy, I'm thinking about my training really, I felt that I had to be really I'm lost for words now. This is why art therapy is so good. Art therapy works when there are no words. When you can't find the words, that's when art speaks. So I think I was resistant to helping somebody. So an example of that is when somebody was maybe using clay and they struggled to attach two bits of clay together. In actual fact, me helping them to attach the thing would have helped them to express themselves better, more authentically, and help them to feel secure in what they were talking about and expressing and processing. However, when I was training, I felt resistant to that. I felt pressure to not help them. And that is because I used to be an art teacher, and I wanted to distinguish between the two things. So the way that may have looked is that person might have then felt frustrated. And actually, that frustration is something that they could build a tolerance for and learn to build that tolerance for. Now, in some situations, that might have been too much. It might have just been too much, and that person might have needed to have that lesson, that art technique taught to them. Or it might have been that they could tolerate that frustration of, I don't know, I'm just thinking, like, say, making a clay model of a person and the arm coming off, some things like that. But I didn't have the depth of knowledge and experience to really make it that informed decision about whether that person would need that help or not. It felt like it was more about me rather than about them. And that is the difference that experience gives. Because when I'm sat with a client, when I'm working with you, if you were to hire me as your therapist, or when I'm working with somebody generally, then it's about what's going on for you. And we would have those conversations about what's useful and what's not useful, and how much structure you might need, or how much structure you might need versus how much kind of freedom and flexibility. And those kind of things are just, they move all the time. So one day you might feel that you can come in and you're just maybe feeling that you're really heightened and feeling stressed. It might be that you've had a really busy day, or you might have been stuck in traffic, or you might be triggered by something, for instance, and you might not want to be creating something that is purely without a plan. You might feel overwhelmed by that. It might make you feel more stressed to suddenly get the paints out and do something big and messy, maybe. It might be that instead, in those moments, you're wanting to, let's say, do some colouring. So I know lots of art therapists will talk about colouring like it is a demon or something, but it's not the worst thing in the world, because it can be really helpful for emotional regulation, and it can really help people to feel grounded. Now, one of the reasons why colouring books are, why a lot of art therapists struggle with colouring books, is because at one point, I haven't seen it for a while really, but these colouring books that are called art therapy, and that's not actually art therapy to sit at home doing some colouring. However, when you choose to do some art for self-expression, emotional regulation, and developing yourself as an artist, developing your art practice, then by all means do something that's controlled, or like small or controlled, whether it's in a colouring book or whether it's even like on a little post-it note here. You could work with a biro if you wanted. We could do maybe just a little portrait or a little doodle or something like that, small. And that's what can help you to feel calmer if you're feeling agitated up here, if you're hyper aroused. That can help you to feel calmer. So, a bit like music, really. So, if you were feeling sad and maybe chose to put some sad music on, some music that matched your mood, then some people might be like, well, why are you listening to that if you're feeling sad? That's not going to cheer you up. But what it does is actually it's matching where you're at. So if you were feeling like really agitated up here, then it might be that you come in. Imagine I'll try and explain this more clearly, because I think I've gone off on a tangent there. Imagine I've just been stuck in traffic and I'm feeling really stressed, and I've just come home, and instead of like getting my art paints out and everything to be able to create something lovely and expressive that I want to do, instead of doing that, I might just come in and just scribble. I might be really angry, really annoyed at my neighbour, or at the person down the road, or the person who's cut me up in traffic, and I might feel really agitated and stressed. I might therefore need to press on hard with the pastels or with the pen, with whatever it is that I'm using. I might need to go fast, hard and fast on the paper. If you're feeling stressed, that's what you need to do, hard and fast, to match your mood, to match that energy. And once you've had a bit of time to scribble, and then just suddenly step back from it, it's like, pause, hang on. Oh, actually, I've released something there. I've released something there. There was not a plan at all. That's come from within. That's the energy from within. Clearly I needed to express that. This is the sort of thing that you can do. I'm working on A2 paper, but so actually doing something big can have such a big impact because you're able to move your arms around. You're able to even use two hands to draw with, like this, like a bilateral drawing. So if you like listening to music, if you're feeling sad and you play sad music, or you're feeling angry and you're suddenly playing the heavy metal to match your mood, and or something like that. It's like, I know a lot of heavy metal fans. It's not necessarily always angry music, but you can feel like that. The emotions can feel like that. And then switch what you're doing. So with this, what this might then mean is slowing down. That might be that we get a pen and colour in some shapes, and that's going slower. It might be that you can add details slower. And you might find that this is just what you need, coming in and doing something small, coming in and doing something that maybe is a bit more structured, like some colouring and like some things like that. But that's the equivalent. Going from really fast, then going from slow, is the equivalent of feeling agitated and therefore listening to some music to match where you are, to have some understanding and acceptance and expression of how you're feeling, and then changing, having that change. So we've got a sense of acceptance and change going on. It's not a case of like having to suddenly express something different, but it's about your nervous system, tapping into how your nervous system is, connecting with the truth of what's going on with your nervous system, and then allowing things to calm down, things to settle, getting out of that freeze, fight or flight zone and into something more focused and flow. So, and it's amazing what you can do when you just choose to make a bit of art for a little while without a plan. So in a nutshell, this is about, I keep saying in a nutshell. Recently I've been saying in a nutshell a lot. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but I certainly have. But I never used to do that. It reminds me of being at uni and Austin Powers and going like, help, I'm in a nutshell. How can a nut be in the shell like this? How? It reminds me of that. So, but I've never said that phrase in the past, so I don't know where it's come from. Maybe there's a podcast that I'm listening to, or some subliminal messages about that. But ultimately, I wanted to come on and share some examples of using art, how to make art without having a plan. if you're not sure what to do, then start making something anyway. And this is my message for you, to pick up some art materials and just start. And if you are wanting some help with this, then send me a message and I can direct you to the right kind of help, whether it's working with me one-to-one directly, or whether it's like my course. You might want to access my course. So hope that this has been helpful. I'm going to take separate pictures of these just to see, like, maybe actually I might merge them together into one. Watch this space. I'm going to merge them together into one. So but that's all for now. Take care. Bye.